Bum bum. Welcome. A bit of a break, haven't we had it?
Yeah. It's been a little bit of a break. We seem to do a little bit of a break every so often. Life gets in the way.
Yeah, so welcome.
To episode
22.
22. There you go.
Welcome to Seeking Focus, a podcast that provides photographers and videographers with a place to critically compare technology, share ideas, and enhance their skills.
What have you been up to these days, man? You've been busy?
Yeah, busy. Lots of photo shoots and video work. Recently did a trip up to Canberra.
Wow, the capital of Australia.
Yeah. I'd never been there. I'd been to every single other state in Australia except for Canberra. And you hear a lot of mixed messages about the environment there. In short, I actually really enjoyed it.
Okay.
I don't know if that says something about me. People say that it's a bit dull and stuff. It's very different to other states. It's not as busy. Very picturesque. I got to say, it was actually quite picturesque.
Okay.
Sunsets, beautiful buildings. It was really nice.
They've got no coast, though.
They're going to, what, sorry?
No coast.
Coast? Well, no, they don't. They do have a lot of mountains.
Oh, okay.
Because they're next to the Great Dividing Range.
Yeah, true. Okay.
And that was a very, very interesting trip. Also got to do some sightseeing while I was there.
Nice.
So that was quite interesting. But the one thing that stood out the most for me when I was there, I realised that I was there for a whole week and not a single person beeped their horn.
Oh, so everyone's happy on the road.
Well,
Unlike
I don't know. Here in Melbourne, it's a miracle if you don't hear a horn every 3 minutes. So that was the one thing that really stood out. No one's beeping at each other.
I think that's very similar to Queensland, to be honest with you, because Queensland is a lot more chilled out as well. So although Queensland's probably not a good comparison, but I think people are a bit more chilled out in Canberra, maybe because there's not much to do there.
Well, I thought there was a few things. But anyway, maybe it says something about us in Melbourne, and Sydney's also the same, where we're very aggressive towards each other on the roads and stuff.
Yeah,
but
after COVID's been, it's probably getting worse.
Something different about us. What did you get up to?
There's been a number of different things that have been happening. But most significant one, I think, I'm going through a little rebranding at the moment of the business.
Rebranding.
Yeah, rebranding. It's a bit of a pain.
So
I think we're going to save that for another episode, though.
But just quickly, is it you're changing Melbourne Images?
Changing the name, man. So
wow, I'm curious about why. But
you're going to have to listen to the future episode, unfortunately.
Okay. Is it painful doing the rebranding?
Yeah, it is actually, and the amount of hoops that you got to sort of jump through and make sure that you do your investigations and due diligence. It's crazy. So, you have to pick a name that's obviously short, straight to the point, easy to remember. I don't know, it's just non-stop. And, working on a few things and updating websites and talking to GoDaddies. You know what's a GoDaddy, right?
I do know what a GoDaddy is.
I don't know, because my wife looked at the, and my credit card invoice the other day. She's like, GoDaddy? What kind of porn site are you actually going on?
For once in my life, it wasn't a porn site, I swear.
It's just like, mate, so, GoDaddy is obviously a web hosting service based in US that a lot of people use all around the world. So just in case people don't know, and it's also start thinking about me weirdly.
Oh, but it's also a domain registration site as well. So it's not just hosting. So very interesting. I will look forward to that episode because I'm sort of curious now.
Yeah, I think it should be a good one, actually. I think it's definitely worthwhile sitting down together and actually discussing it and sort of looping back to potentially one of the earlier episodes that we did for the law. I think was it? Oh, remind me. We did an episode earlier regarding the law and sort of, what to do if people don't want to pay you money. And that's kind of similar to that sort of genre. But anyway, should be interesting. And I think it's going to be very educational for a lot of people too. There you go.
I do look forward to that. But today's episode is a little bit different.
Yes.
We're basically...
Is it different, really? No.
It is different. Yeah, we haven't done this one before.
No, we haven't.
We keep getting asked about it, but we've never actually done an episode on lenses.
Yes, lenses.
Or
everything that we use. I mean, I actually think the lenses are a lot more important than the actual camera itself sometimes.
I do believe that's true. I mean, you can have a great camera and a bad lens and you'll get bad photos.
Correct.
You can have a bad camera but a good lens and get yourself some decent photos.
Agree.
Yeah. So today's episode is all about lenses, and in the middle of it all, we're going to drop in a review of a brand called DZO. We have a lens that was sent to us for review from the video guys in Melbourne.
Thank you, video guys, once again. Come
Yes.
to the party.
Yes, it's a Pictor 20-55mm cine lens. So we're going to drop it into the mix and then do some comparisons of it, but that'll be later in the show. So let's start off. There is a variety of different lenses out there. So the first one that pops to mind for me is a prime lens. Now, a prime lens is basically a lens that doesn't zoom in, doesn't zoom out. So you have one still sort of image, and if you want to take a photo closer, you've got to pick up the whole camera and tripod if you're using a tripod and move it closer or take it back.
There's no zoom on it.
Yeah, so it's one fixed focal length. So that is a prime. Next we have...
Well, zoom lenses, baby.
Ooh, what's a zoom lens?
Zoom lens is obviously a lens that you can, zoom in and zoom out and make it wide or make it, I guess,
Closer in.
closer in.
Okay, I've got a question. So we've got primes and we've got zooms, right? So zoom sounds like it's more practical because it allows you to do a lot more things.
Yes.
So why does everyone, not just buy zoom lenses as opposed to buying prime lenses? So what's the difference? Tell me that.
Well, I guess from my perspective, zoom lens, you can't get a f-stop that's very wide open. With a 50mm, for instance, you can go 1.2. 1.2 is going to give you such a fluffy kind of look to the image itself. And, well, zoom lenses, I think the best you can get is 2.8, isn't it?
To be honest with you, that's the best I've ever had, but not to say that you can't get other ones. But for me personally, the reason I wouldn't be getting a zoom lens for every single one of my shoots is because zoom lenses are known to create a distortion of the image. So if you go wide, it distorts the outside. If you zoom in, it gives you a distortion. So it's one of those things where it does a lot of things. Like you can zoom in, zoom out. You can change while you're recording, you can zoom in and out. But there is potential for the lens to distort. Now, obviously, depending on the quality, will obviously change things a little bit. We've got macro lenses as well. So macro lenses are the ones that are used for basically very, very close work. So like when you're shooting insects and so on. I have a couple of them. One of the ones that I use is a 100mm. And ironically, I actually use it for portraits.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so it gives you a really nice sharp image, but it's not overly sharp because the focus drops off quite easily. It's a 2.8 as well.
You've used that for food photography as well,
I
didn't
do
you?
use it for food photography because I just like the sharpness and the look it gives you. You don't have to use it, but I just find it's really nice, especially if you're doing advertising, which they're going to blow up and they want to use parts of the actual image. It's a very, very sharp image. So
macro stuff is really good. And I think it's definitely worthwhile owning one, 100%.
Yeah.
Saying that though, I think another macro lens is the probe lens. That's a macro lens as well. Ooh. I know we're supposed to sort of mention that a little bit later on, but I think I'll mention it now because
please go on.
Because
what is a probe lens first of
all?
all?
So probe lens is as far as I know, only one manufacturer makes it. It's Laowa. And Laowa makes the 24mm macro lens. Now this lens is probably close to about 400 mil, so 40 centimeters long. I actually should probably measure it.
You should. That's the one that basically looks like a really thin broomstick.
Yeah, so it's basically very, very long lens. And what it does is it's a wide angle zoom. Well, it's a wide angle macro lens with LED lights at the front. And the reason why it does have a LED at the front is because
for rectal examinations.
Well, if you want to use it for that, that's by all means. Don't use my one though, okay? But the actual f-stop on it is actually f14 to f40.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's really, really... So for you to be able to shoot at, say, f14 or even f40, you need a hell of a lot of light thrown into that space, you know what I mean? But what I've used that lens for instance, is taking photos or videos of ants, you know what I mean, and then almost putting like for instance, I did a while back a shoot with beehive, and I actually stuck the lens into the beehive, and you could see all the bees and everything else. And the thing is, that lens is not intrusive in a way, you know what I mean? So the animal or the insect don't think that way. That insect doesn't actually seem to see.
I wasn't thinking that. I was actually visualizing the bee sitting there looking at this big thing coming towards with glowing lights and thinking, oh, that's not obtrusive. Anyway, it's just coming like a Mack truck, just coming straight at me.
But it's a very interesting lens though, and that's why I've sort of mentioned it. But the only thing is with that lens is fully manual. So there's no zoom. Sorry, obviously it's a prime lens. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about. And also it's a fully manual, so manual focus and manual aperture. You know what I mean?
How can you cope with that?
Yeah, I know, it's very interesting, especially on the Sony. There you go.
Moving away from the probe lenses, we've also got fisheyes.
Yes.
So fisheyes basically give you a circular sphere sort of look. Very popular with the old 80s skateboarders.
You can get really close to a subject and still obviously be quite creative with it as well.
Yeah, so it sort of pops the image out. And you don't have to go to the full sphere look. You can still get a square image. But what happens is it sort of does the pinch and the punch sort of thing in the front. And it's really creative if you're taking a photo of a dog, for example, because the nose is ginormous and everything falls away from there on. Depending on the fisheye, obviously, you can have a few issues. Like with my one, it's a 8 to 16, I believe it is. And every time I try and take a photo, my elbows are in the picture on either side of the camera.
So the view of angle is like almost over 180 degrees.
Well, it's almost 180, yeah. So you got to be really careful with it. And when you're trying to get close to something, like for example, I was trying to take a photo of a can of Coke. I was literally like 3 millimeters from it. And I didn't realize how close I was because I was using the camera and I was behind it. And I ended up knocking over the actual can with the lens because I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
So, and then there's also anamorphic lenses. So anamorphic lenses basically very, very, what they do is they take a really wide angle and they try and compress it into a single sort of point. So it puts a lot of information into your sensor. A lot of people use them in movies nowadays, and they also create a nice a glow to them. Headlights will actually create like a lens flare, like a line.
Yeah, I think the lens flare is the main thing for it, those lenses.
They are very sought after for that reason, and it's a little bit more creative, I think. But it's not something that you'd be able to shoot with every day, and it's probably more related to video or movie than still photography. I guess you could probably use it with stills. I don't think anyone has.
I never used one, to be honest with you, and I sort of never really. I would like to play with one, but never really had a chance.
Yeah, there's a couple of ones that have popped up on the market, which basically allow you to just strap it straight onto your camera, but mostly anamorphic lenses are adaptions or kits that build onto another lens. Quentin Tarantino is a very, very big fan of anamorphic lenses.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so that's something to know. All right, so
interesting.
Brands. There is so many brands of lenses out there. Okay, so I'm going to start off with probably the most expensive or close to the most expensive lens I know, the ARRI. That is one brand that produces video cameras, and they use them for movies, and their lenses are astronomically expensive. Can you think of another brand?
Sony.
Who could forget Sony? So basically, every camera manufacturer generally has their own range of lenses. So you got Canon, you got Sony, Nikon, Fujitsu.
Fuji makes one, I think. I never used one, but you've got your Sigmas, you've got your Nikons or Nikons. Laowa, obviously. There's a few things. There's a couple of names here that you mentioned on the notes. I've got no idea.
Yeah, Mikey, for example.
Yeah,
Mikey's,
never heard of that before.
Yeah, they're more of a micro four thirds cinema lens. They do EF lenses and some other ones, but they're quite costly. So they produce reasonably good quality lenses for cine, but they're budget lenses. They're not astronomically expensive, and they're reasonably good quality for what you're paying. I mean, they're only looking at $500-600 for a cine lens. It's very small, and it is designed for a micro four thirds camera. But they're really good. Like the Blackmagic micro camera, the little sports camera, fits those lenses, so they're really great for that.
Never used one before, man. I've used Takinas, I've used Tamrons, I've used obviously Calzanes.
Schneider. Have you ever used Schneider?
Never used Schneider, no.
I've got a lot of their filters. I can't afford their lenses, unfortunately. They're like top end once again.
Really?
You also got Cookie, or it's Koki or Cook, or whatever they call them. I can't pronounce it, but that once again is like up there with the ARRI lenses, and that's a cine lens as well.
Yeah, no, I don't charge enough for my videos to be able to afford those lenses, unfortunately.
Yeah, so and I believe Sigma is like a broad-ranging sort of lens manufacturer. They produce lenses for everything, basically.
Yeah, except RF.
RF, and that's a.
I was saying that that's probably going to change. Hopefully, well, I don't know.
Yeah. So but
Like
basically,
Canon.
Sigma is the budget
Did I
version.
did I mention that I don't like Canon?
No, you've never mentioned that.
No, that's right. Maybe that's not for another
Well,
episode.
you're a Sony person.
Yeah.
But Sigma produces a wide range of lenses that basically for every camera, and they do a pretty good job. Early on, like probably about 15, 20 years ago, their lenses weren't very great, but they've excelled. They've got the Art series now, which is basically the high end versions of their lenses.
Yeah, I've got a few of those myself, and I do swear by them as well. So
Yeah, the only thing that I have noticed about the Sigma lenses compared to the the standard like Canon or the Sony lenses and all that is the weight. Sigma lenses weigh a ton.
I never really took notice of it, to be honest with you. But
you're
probably right.
I think you had a 19 or 20 mil lens that you were trying to palm off to me at one stage, which I wanted. But
Oh yeah, we did too.
That-
But that was
that was over a kilo for a little.
that was a 20 mil 1.2, 1.4.
Yeah, but that thing weighed.
It weighed almost a kilo. Yeah, it was bloody heavy.
It was
saying that to astrophotography is probably one of the best lenses.
Yeah, it would be, but I mean that's because it's just sitting there not doing anything. If you had to carry that around, take photos, you'd end up destroying your arms.
Yeah. I did buy actually a wide angle lens. It's actually sitting in front of you lower. So it's a manual. So it's a wide angle. Sorry, we're talking about wide angle, but it's 14 mil, zero distortion at f4 to f22.
And distortion is something we'll be talking about later, but at a wide angle, that is actually virtually impossible not to get distortion on it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting lens. So that's why I got it because of few, obviously, like if I'm going to the city or just taking a couple of wide angle shots, just use it for that. But yeah, it's an interesting lens. But anyway, sorry, continue on. We are diving off to another location.
Well, the last one I want to touch on is DZO, which is a reasonably new brand, and basically they do cine lenses. So cine lenses we'll talk about later on. They don't do still camera lenses. Cine lenses are designed for video, and they actually have a variety of different versions of their lenses. So there's the Vesper, there's the Carter, the Linglang, and the Pictor.
So that's all Chinese, I'm guessing.
How did you guess? Was it
a wild guess.
It was the Linglang name, right?
Yeah.
All right, so our video guys actually sent us one of the lenses from DZO. It's from the Pictor range, which basically is a 20 mil through to a 55. So it is a zoom lens, and it is a cine lens, so it doesn't really work very well with photography. You could use it for photography, but you probably wouldn't want to. It's quite a heavy lens. And the construct of it is actually solid metal. Like most cine lenses, generally high-end cine lenses, are generally metal, alloy or solid metal. So the DZO is probably mid-range, not the most expensive, not the cheapest, but the quality is actually quite good. I got to use it, and one of the things that I actually was impressed about is it's parfocal.
What do you mean by that? I don't know.
So basically, with lenses, like still camera lenses, or zoom specifically, when you're focused on an object at a wide angle and then you zoom into it, the focus goes slightly out.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so with the DZO and most zoom lenses on a high-end level for cine, basically if you're wide or you're close up, the focus doesn't change.
Yeah.
So you can actually be filming and zooming into the person's face, and where you're focused will not change.
I'm just wondering. So breathing, that's a totally different thing. Then again,
Breathing is
slightly different. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Okay. I understand what you're saying. Because breathing is when you zoom in and out.
No, zoom.
Sorry.
Breathing can actually is a focus related issue.
Oh, it's focusing. Yeah. So, but it does compress the image, so it zooms in rather than
even on a prime.
Yeah, on a prime, on a
creates
cheapo. Yeah. But that's more for cinematic stuff, though. Like as in, like most of the photography lenses, they do focus breathing, right?
They do. They do most of them, but it depends on the quality. But we'll get into that in a few minutes anyway. So parfocal. So that means if I'm filming and I'm doing an interview of you, and I decide that I want to zoom in on instead of your face, I want to zoom into your eye or something like that. I don't have to worry about the focus. It's going to be exactly where I set it. So if I focused on your eye to begin with, when I zoom into your eye, it's still going to be perfectly focused. Really, really nice touch. You'll find the cheaper cine lenses, like for example Samyang, or Canon or Zine, tend to basically lose the focus. And it's really nice to have a parfocal lens. I enjoy playing with it. I tried it against a couple of my other lenses, and I found that the DZO was actually quite a nice lens. It was very sharp, but at the same time, it had a bit of a softness to it, which gave it more of a creative sort of feel. So compared to like one of the cine lenses that I use, one of the Canon cine lenses, the 24mm or the 50mm that I use, it wasn't quite as sharp. But when I say that, I'm talking like 5 to 7% difference, barely noticeable, and it created a softer image, so it almost artistic. We're watching that video just recently on YouTube that you sent me of a place up the road in the bush, a little restaurant where the person grows the products in their own house.
Oh yeah. That was
It was very cinematic. It was very soft. It was smooth and clear to the eye. Yes. Ironically, they were actually using DZO lenses on that clip as well.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So I was actually impressed with it. The DZO was actually really, really nice. It had a nice image to it. It was crisp, but not too crisp, and it was very artistic. So if I was trying to do a little bit of artistic stuff, that would be the way I'd go. The cost of that lens is about $3,500 to $4,000. Australian, that's right. You can buy it here in Melbourne. And basically, look, on the price range, a Canon lens that does the same thing, you'd be looking at between $7,000 and $40,000. Yeah. So it is a huge difference in price. So yeah, it's quite a good lens. I liked it. I'm actually going to be purchasing one myself next financial year, just for those creative sort of shots and passion projects. It's got a nice feel to it. The only downfall that I did find, the construction is really, really nice. But just moving the zoom feature in it, I found it a little bit rough. It wasn't anything bad, but
the ring itself.
So I think where you're saving a lot of money is that the production of these lenses is not to the highest quality like a Canon, for example. So whilst they're optically a great lens, they provide a great range. I think the construct could be a touch better, but in the scheme of things, I'm paying $3,500 compared to $40,000. So do I mind that it's a little bit rougher? No. I'm still going to buy it. So thank you to Video Guys for providing us that one. It was actually a really nice lens.
Much appreciate that. Yeah, I haven't actually had a chance to play around with it, but next time you get one for Sony, I definitely will.
Well, Sony doesn't really, use these types of lenses. It only has kit lenses, doesn't it? Moving on.
Continue.
All right, so most camera manufacturers, Canon, Sony, whatever, they generally produce a number of different lenses for their cameras, and they range. You've got the kit lenses, which, you buy a camera and it says, you buy these 2 lenses, they're an extra $200 and we'll throw them in. And then you've got the mid-range sort of lenses that they produce, and then you've got the Pro Series lenses.
Yep.
Right. So, I know Canon does that. Sony, presumably.
Yeah, they do.
They all do it. Yeah. And, when you're starting off and you don't know what you need, you'll buy a whole bunch of stuff and then you'll regret it down the track because, if you bought the most expensive. As opposed to me, who uses all my 28 different lenses. I use every single one of them every day. I don't. But, with a kit lens, it's really good because it gets you started, especially if you're not a pro photographer. You sort of just go off and you basically can buy these lenses cheap, try them out, see what they're like, and they produce reasonably good images.
Yeah. At the beginning, it's it's when you're starting off, it's definitely worthwhile, putting your hands into certain different things and see what works.
What works for you, yeah. So the price of the the price of the kit lenses is actually astronomically cheap.
Yeah.
And then as you go up, they start quadrupling, and then doubling and tripling, and it just goes out of hand. So one example is the Canon 50mm. I think everyone who's owned the Canon has had a 50mm. And they produce 3 different versions of it. So there's the kit version, which is called the STM, I believe, and it's an f1.8 f-stop.
The 50mm.
The 50mm, yeah. So that particular lens on the market at the moment, I believe, is $175. So it's actually quite cheap.
Yeah.
For a lens. The body is made of plastic. The visual quality of it is not great, but it's not bad. It's a good starting sort of lens. I've had a couple of people that I know who the lens has fallen apart in their hands. So the build quality is just really lacking. So, but you are paying $175 for a 50mm. So it's pretty good. Then they got their middle range sort of lenses in the 50mm, which is I believe the USM, and there are
the L series.
No, not the L series. USM is the 1.4. and that's $600.
Right.
Yeah, so they've got 3 different versions in the 50mm. So you've got the super cheapo plastic, then you've got the...
I thought that one, the USM one, was the L series.
It might also be a USM for the L series, but this is just the standard sort of mid-range one that I'm referring to. So that's a 1.6 f-stop. So that's a little bit more, it gives a little bit more creative flair to it, but the price only goes from $175 to $600. So it's like it's over 3 times the amount, for a 0.2 change in the f-stop. The construct's a little bit better. It's still plastic, but it's a little bit more solid. I actually own one of those, and I don't really generally use it too much, but it's lasted me for numerous years. Quality of the picture is pretty good. Not a huge fan of it, but it's not bad. A lot of people love it. I'm not a 50mm sort of person.
Yeah.
Right. And then you take the step to the L series, which is the pro grade lenses. Now, so remember, the kit lens, which is a 50mm, just like this one, which is a 1.8, is $175. And then the pro series, which is a 1.2, costs $2,200. So we're looking at what is it? 10 times, over 10 times the price. And look, the reality behind it is, yes, it is a better lens. It's made of metal. It's got better visuals, better optics, better everything, less distortion, colors are better. But with pro-grade lenses compared to starting kit sort of lenses, the visual difference, I think personally, is not a huge difference. I think you probably, every time you go up a quality of a lens, maybe you're getting 5, maybe if you're lucky, 10% difference in quality. So we've gone from a lens where we're sort of jumping up 10 to 15 or 20% better quality from $175 to $2,200.
Yeah.
So why would you buy an LCD?
You're buying it for 1.2, right?
Well, you're buying it for 1.2. You're also buying it because it's going to last longer. It's made of metal or, predominantly better quality materials. But it also means that as a pro-grade photographer, you want to get the best picture that you can. Right? And even if it means there's a 5% difference, well, that's good enough for you. So you'll spend the money. But your average Joe doesn't need that sort of lens. I mean, if you got it given to you, don't say no, take it. But for the reality behind it is they're great lenses. Even the cheap ones, the pro-grade ones, they're all good. Slight differences. So you've got to make your mind up as to what you want. So that's the difference between a pro-grade and a kit lens.
Price.
All right. So we've spoken about still photography lenses, and we've also spoken about cine lenses. So do you want to take a stab at the differences?
I never used the cine lens, to be honest with you. I'm still sort of junior burger for that.
Technically, you have used a cine lens. Your probe lens, for example, is a cine lens.
Is it?
Yeah. Well, everything's manual on it.
Yeah. Okay. But I don't think it's got pro-grade glass, as in cine glass as such in that.
Well, that's debatable, because you can get a wide variety of cine lenses. Samyang, which is one of the cheapest, nastiest lenses out there, produces cine lenses.
Yeah, true.
So what is the difference between a still lens and a manual lens? So look, a still lens generally will have autofocus. So, you use that type of lens for photography. So, you got autofocus on it. A cine lens, there is no autofocus. It's all manual. You've got to pull the focus on everything. And you sort of be asking the question, well, why does a cine lens cost so much if it doesn't have autofocus? Because we videographers and movie producers are special, and we need to sort of say, well, I'm choosing to focus on what I want. But without sounding pompous, I don't think that's possible. When you're using autofocus on a camera, like for example the Sony, you've got autofocus. One of the things that I've picked up occasionally on your camera is the focus decides to move, and it goes and starts focusing on something else, and it goes in and out.
It can focus hunt a little bit,
Canons are probably renowned for that. I mean, my Canon, when I try and do video on it, it's horrific. But then again, I've got an early version of a Canon camera, so that's probably why. But with the cine lenses, you control where it's going to be focused, and you can create that smooth transition, which an auto lens is a lot faster. So like a still lens would, focus in on one product and focus into something else very, very quickly, and it doesn't create that nice transitional effect which you have.
You can change, like in Sony lens, in Sony cameras, you can actually say, I want this focus racking at very fast, medium, or slow. Excuse me. So, but yes, you can sort of adjust. But yes, it's all almost like AI / touch or whatever else. So where you've got your cine lenses on manual, and then you can decide, if you're a DP or, producer of some sort or whatever else you do, you can decide where you want to focus on. So yes, I agree.
Okay. On the subject of focus, we've also got focus creep, which we spoke about earlier. So what happens is when you focus on an item using a still camera lens, generally speaking, not all of them, I mean, it depends on the quality, obviously, but if I focus on something in front of me and then I adjust the focus to something that's like, 100 meters away, what will happen is whilst the camera is changing the focal point, the actual image starts moving.
Yep.
So basically, it's almost like you've got a zoom lens and you're actually slightly zooming in. So the picture actually grows or shrinks every time you change the focus.
That's focus breathing.
Or focus creep. So cine lenses generally don't have that. In saying that's a very generalized sort of statement. They shouldn't have that, but there are cheaper ones out there which unfortunately do. The Zines, which is also Samyang, which is also Rokinon, which are all the same company. They just got different names. I think the Zine is the higher quality version. They actually do have focus creeping. So it's one of those things. So
interesting. I never really used one of those lenses, so I don't know. And I'm pretty sure my 50mm did have that. So, but yeah, that was an arguable one. But we're not going to talk about that.
Yeah. Another thing that basically still camera lenses have is stability control.
Yes.
Right. So if if you're walking around and you're moving the camera, it balances out the image so you don't get as much shake.
Yep.
Cine lenses don't have that. They just don't have anything.
Yep.
Actually, yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it? It's cine lenses.
Well, you're potentially just buying the lens for quality of the glass. Glass is the main thing here, isn't it?
But you can get still photos with high quality glass as well.
Yeah, I know.
Get your L series or the G Master or whatever it is.
Yeah, G Master. The Sony is G Master, so that's probably top of the range for Sony.
And did you notice I did not take a dig at G Master, which I normally do? I'm controlling myself.
Good job.
Yes, it's very difficult. Okay, so also still lenses have f-stops. So f-stop is like, when you look at the lens, it says, f-stop 2.8 or f-stop 4 or whatever it is. And an f-stop is basically how much your aperture opens up.
Yep.
So it's a measure of how much the actual aperture on the lens can open up.
Correct.
So that's what it records. Cine lenses don't use f-stops. They use t-stops. We'll talk about those later. And generally speaking, which still baffles me to a degree, a normal standard lens, which has stability control in it and autofocus and all those features, is generally a cheaper lens compared to a cine lens. Which is funny because a cine lens doesn't have any of this technology in it. So you sort of go, well, shouldn't it be more expensive?
Yeah.
All right. Now, with a standard still lens, the aperture is generally changed from within the camera. So you've got the buttons, more light, less light, and it opens it up. Now we'll move over to the cine lenses, which are predominantly used for video production or movies. And don't get me wrong, you can actually use still lenses for movie production, and you can also use cine lenses for still, but they're probably not as suited for each other. Yep. So with a cine lens, what you'll find is they've got geared teeth on the outside. So the focus and the aperture and the zoom all have little teeth on them. And they're designed so that basically you can put a focus puller on them and you can adjust them. So that means you can run a little knob on the side of the actual camera, focus, move in and out, or you can use an automated system where basically one person's filming and someone else is sitting away watching on a screen.
Yeah, on their monitor.
Yeah, and they've got a control which runs to the camera, a wireless system. So you could be watching what I'm filming and you could be adjusting the focus for me while I'm just concentrating on the movement of the camera. So the teeth are on there for that reason. That's something you won't find with normal still cameras, but you can buy rubber rings that fit around and convert the lens, which is what I did when I first started off. Okay, so there's an external aperture control on a cine lens. So that means basically when you want to adjust the aperture, you basically grab the outside of the ring and you turn it. There's no auto function inside the camera to adjust the aperture. Right? So it's all physically done by hand. The focus ring Also, the difference between that and a still camera is the throw, the amount of turning that you'll do on the focus.
Yeah.
So with a still camera, your focus ring will probably turn 30, 40 degrees.
Yes, right.
And what happens is if you're trying to adjust, fine-tune the focus, because you're doing it by hand, you could quite easily go over the focal point or not reach it, and it's a bit flimsy and finicky to actually try and get focus on a standard still camera. With, for example, let's use a Canon cine lens, the Cine 24. That actually has around 300 to 320 degrees of throw. So the lens almost spins a full circle for the focus.
I'm just trying to compute that in my head. Yes, okay. Cool.
It causes issues if you're not very quick. You know, so basically you turn the focus and nothing's happening. You just
so for you to be able to focus rack from a person's face, for instance, to say infinity behind them,
there's a lot of movement.
Far out, man. Like you got to be really, you know,
pretty much.
Yeah.
So that's where automated external pullers are the way to go, because you've got a button, you press it, and it goes bzz, and just throws it really quickly.
And it can be fairly quick. Okay, right.
Yeah, but I mean, then you've got to carry the mechanical system, with the buttons and everything.
I'm guessing that's very expensive too.
They can range from about $700 through to about $5,000, depending on what you're running and latency and so on. So they're a little bit different there.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. So it does. When you're not used to it, it takes a lot longer. But the reason for it, that movement, is it allows you to really fine tune the focus. So, you don't go, you turn it and you just go completely over. Yeah. The focal rings and the apertures and everything are silky smooth on cine lenses. They're so smooth. They just turn them and like you could breathe on them and they'll spin. No, that's an overstatement, but they are silky smooth.
Right.
So the movement in those is fantastic. A normal still camera, pretty rough and rugged,
It's still smooth, but okay.
By comparison, they're not smooth at all.
Right,
well, we're talking high-end cine lenses here.
Okay.
There are some cheap crap things out there where, it's like, trying to move sandpaper along. Also, still lenses have f-stops. We talked about that. That's your aperture, how big it is. It's not really a measure of light. It's just how big the aperture is. Yeah. Cine lenses don't work on f-stops, they work on t-stops. So a t-stop is actually more universal. So what it does is it's a measure of light. So it will tell you, based on how open this is how much light you're going to get in. Slightly different measurement, and it's more accurate as well. Now, the benefit of that is that if I was to change cine lenses and even change different brands, technically those t-stops should be identical. So if I'm at, say, T2, and I put another lens on there at T2, it should be allowing in exactly the same amount of light.
Okay, so you don't need to play around with ISOs and whatever.
It's consistency. So if I'm changing the lens, I'm going from a wide angle to a zoom lens or whatever, I just have to say, well, what was it set at? It was T2. The next one needs to be set at T2 and it'll be identical, which is really important when you're doing videos and movies, because you want to have the consistency. You don't want to suddenly go from a dark shot to overly bright. It can be fixed in post-production, but why would you?
Oh, that's right.
Now, cine lenses cost significantly more, basically because the optics are generally quite big. Even though they don't have all the technology behind them, the optics are ginormous by comparison. So a still camera lens is probably, like, I'm thinking 6 to 8 centimeters wide in diameter. Maybe 10 centimeters. My cine lenses are like 115 centimeters. Actually 115. That's right, 115. Sorry, 15 centimeters wide. So they're like 2-3 times bigger in width. Okay. Could you imagine a lens that was 115 centimeters wide?
No.
It'd be 1 point something. Yeah. That wouldn't work unless we're doing satellites. So that's an interesting one. So and generally speaking, cine lenses are much more reliable, and they have external markings as well. That's a big factor. Now, you're probably thinking, why do I really give a crap about external markings? Because cine lenses and cinematography is designed to be done by more than one person, generally speaking. You need to have the markings on the outside so people can see from the side what you're shooting, the distance. So if they're adjusting focus and all that, they can actually look at it and go, this person's doing this, we can adjust. So there's huge markings on the side. And at a quick glance, you can also see what T-stop you're at, as opposed to to a normal lens from a still camera where there is no visual cues. It's only on your screen, and you've got to look at this little number on there. But with these things, you can be sitting on the side and just see these massive numbers, and they're hugely printed. So it makes a huge difference. You don't look sold on this.
Wow. No. I'm just trying to compute everything because it's so much information to take on, especially I never really shot with a cine lens as such, and never really worked in a big production sort of space or whatever else. But look, it's interesting stuff, and I think it's probably worthwhile sort of investigating a little bit further too. So yeah.
It's one of those things where cine lenses are complicated, but they're not. And either you like them or you don't like them. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love autofocus, but if I'm trying to do something cinematic and I'm trying to create a more artistic sort of piece, cine lenses are the way to go.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And I think it's just scary because they're generally, like you said, much bigger. They cost a hell of a lot more money,
and they're heavier as well.
And I mean, hey, it looks mean, when you sort of bring it on set, and the camera looks massive and looks fantastic. But yeah, it's kind of it's, how can I say, it's scary at the same time. You know what I mean? It's just like, if you drop this, there goes 20 grand.
My lenses are worth more than my cameras, which is kind of sad. But there you go. All right, so we know the difference between cines. We know the difference between stills. Now, both of those combined, what is the difference between a cheap lens and an expensive lens? So be it a cine, be it a still.
Yep.
What are a couple of things that you would say would be the difference between a cheap lens and an expensive lens?
Well, the main one will probably come to mind will be construction, number one. So obviously all the more expensive stuff is a lot more alloy / metal construction. Mm-hmm. So if anything goes wrong, if you do drop it or whatever else, I mean, you don't want to do that anyway, but they will survive potentially a drop rather than the plastic one potentially break, right? The second one that I can think of is aperture. So normally the sort of kit lenses or the cheaper lenses don't come up with enough glass for you to be able to have wide open 1.4, 1.2.
2.8s, yeah. Also, on the cheaper kit lenses, what you'll notice is it's a variable aperture as well. Yeah. So, for example, if it's a zoom lens, you'll notice on the lens it actually doesn't have f 2.8. It'll say f 3.5 to 5.6 because if you zoom into an image, the f-stop changes because it can't let in as much, it's not as open to let in as much light. So the cheaper lenses generally have a variable f-stop. And the higher grade ones will basically, they can go lower. I mean, I think the lowest I've ever heard of is 0.9.
Yeah, I've heard of that as well, but I never really used one.
Yeah,
I mean, how
you'd focus on the person's eye.
I was going to say depth of field would be crazy, mate, because you focus on the eye and those will be out of focus.
Exactly, yeah. But I think Voigtlander produces them. But I've never had one. I've never had a use for it. Would be interested to play with for a bit of fun. Yeah. 2 portrait shots. Your eye is perfectly focused.
I think the probe lens actually, the lower one, if you shoot at f14, because the construction of the lens, it's actually really shallow depth of field, like extremely to a point where you kind of go, crap, man, I've got to shoot this at like f22 or even higher. Because last time I did that, and I focused it on, I had the aperture on f14, and extremely, the depth of field was extreme. But saying that it is a macro lens as well, and it's a very specialized lens.
It is. And it's a very good looking lens as well.
Yeah, it looks pretty cool.
Non-obtrusive, as you said. All right. Another thing that you'll find with the cheaper lenses is the color. Now, generally speaking, a lens, if it's a good quality lens, should not be altering the color of your image. So the cheaper lenses will color cast, so they'll actually cast the color on top of the actual image, which then in post-production, be it a still photo or a video photo, you need to remove that. Prime example is the Samyang cine lenses. I've never actually used a Samyang still lens. I've only used a cine lens when I first started off, when I moved across. They create a green glow to everything.
Yeah, you told me about that.
So and then I've heard from other people, I don't know why this is the case, I doubt it, but this is what they say. The Rokinon, which is actually the same brand as Samyang, it's just relabeled. And the reason for it, do you know what the reason they're using Rokinon? it caught me off guard. They use Rokinon to try and sell to the US market because it sounds more American as opposed to Samyang.
Yeah. Samyang does sound very Chinese, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Rokinon sounds like, more American, Stars and Stripes. So they've changed the name, same product, just purely for the marketing purposes.
Yeah.
But they say that the Rokinons have a purple tinge. Now, I've never used one, and I doubt that very much. I think people are looking at them a bit colorblind because, the same construction, same everything. So color grading is one of those things that changes the color of your image. If you're shooting, for example, with a Canon, one of the Canon cine lenses, the image comes out exactly as it should. It doesn't have weird color casts on it.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, the DZO lens that we were talking about earlier from Video Guys, that actually didn't change the color from what I saw. It actually had pretty close to normal. I mean, with something like, for example, the Samyang, which is a cheapo lens, you can actually see a huge difference in the color. It's, and don't get me wrong, it can work in your favor. It creates a different atmosphere.
Yeah.
But you need to be mindful that if you are trying to get true color, you're not going to get it. So the DZO Pictor 20-55 that I've used actually was pretty accurate in the color. So surprisingly, it was pretty good. All right, so we've got color image quality. So generally speaking, with sharper lenses, not sharper lenses, more expensive lenses, you'll get a sharper image.
Yeah.
And with cheaper lenses, you'll get a softer image, especially around the edges.
Yep. I think the glass is the main part of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You do obviously spend a little bit more cash, and you do get much better glass.
You do.
Yeah. So
there's different ways. I was reading about how they make the different types of glass and the spheres on them and stuff. They're all slightly different.
Yeah.
And each one of them gives you a different effect. And obviously the cost involved in producing these is a big factor. So also cheaper lenses cause distortion.
Yep.
So the image on the outside might not be as sharp.
The vignetting component, or
vignetting, but it also sometimes it's not the focus goes out, or it distorts the image.
On the wider. Yeah.
And when we say distorts, it means like it twists the image, so almost like a fisheye effect to some degree.
Yeah.
So there is problems with that vignetting, as you just mentioned. Which
I guess photography wise, you can fix that in post production. Photoshops or whatever else can kind of make it a little bit better, but video, comparing it to video,
you can do it in video as well. You can.
Yeah, I guess you can.
But what I've noticed with post production when it comes to stills, if I try and adjust the vignetting that we're getting, sorry, just for people who don't know what vignetting is, can you
vignetting?
I keep saying vignetting because I'm having my salad and my vignetting. Sorry, can you pronounce it properly? Vignetting. So the g is not in there. So vignetting. There you go. Vignetting.
But what vignetting is, it's you get on all four sides of the lens or of the image, you get dark. How can I say? What do you say? I don't even know.
Shadow. It's like
dark shadow. Yeah. So I mean, sometimes it's cool for the effect of it, but most of the time you're trying to avoid it. And if you want to add one afterwards in post production, then you can. But you don't want to obviously have any vignetting in the image itself because it distorts the image, or it just degrades the image potentially. So that's my thing.
Yes. And now I'm going to go back to calling it vignetting. Vignetting. Sorry, my apologies. Speech impediments are us, or me anyway. Okay, so more expensive lenses also have coatings on. Generally speaking, most lenses do have a coating of some sort, but the more expensive ones are more durable. They stop reflections. Lens flares. They help out in a variety of different ways. Also, even like if water gets on it beads off as opposed to just sticks there. So the coatings are generally, on the better quality cameras, are better quality coatings. I have had in past, many years ago, before I got into photography and videography professionally, I had a video camera, and the coating on the actual lens, mind you, was a Sony. So, the coating actually started crumbling off the lens, and you couldn't use it anymore because there was actually a distortion in the image where the coating had fallen off.
Must have been a long time ago.
Oh, it was 30 years ago or something like that. But it was interesting to note that. Also, focus breathing is more prominent on the cheaper lenses, as we spoke earlier, where it's basically if you're zooming in and out, focusing in and out of different places, it creates a zooming effect. Right? So that happens a lot on the cheaper lenses. Lens flare, So basically what happens is that your lens can pick up light reflections from other places, and it creates a lens flare. So it's those spots on the screen.
Yep.
Some lenses are more prominent to it. It happens quite more to the cheaper lenses. The expensive lenses, it still happens. I mean, if you're going to have a light coming into the screen,
Yeah, of course.
we're talking bright light like a spotlight, or we're talking a sun sort of reflecting from an angle. It creates that blur and that frosting of the actual image. It's not as prominent on the more expensive lenses because they are treated and designed to deal with it. And look, it can be a favourable sort
I
of
was
thing.
going to say, yeah, some people prefer that. You know what I mean? Sometimes when you do have a nice lens flare, it's almost looking sexy too. You know? So, yeah.
And once again, we spoke about it earlier, durability. So durability is a big part. I mean, I've had, this actually happened to me when I first started using cine lenses, the Samyungs, which, don't get me wrong, they're a great lens to start off with, but they have some major fallbacks and drawbacks on them.
Yeah.
I was actually at a gig using a lens, and the aperture ring on the inside froze up. So I was spinning the dial and nothing was changing. And the construction on the inside, when I actually opened it up, because I mentioned this on a previous episode, at the actual event, I had to open a lens and rebuild it. Now, I had no idea how to rebuild a lens. And it was a sheer miracle that I actually got it working.
Yeah.
But the aperture on the inside had this little flimsy metal ring, which bent. And that was the reason it wasn't changing the actual lens.
Wow.
So the construct is really poor on the cheap lenses. Yeah. And like the 50mm we were talking about earlier, which fell apart in people's hands, that's the difference. One other thing that is important to know is the expensive sort of cine lenses, and this is not so much an issue for normal still lenses, but cine lenses, the actual lens size, so from the back to the front, are all identical.
Yep.
The reason for that is because, if I basically have got my camera set up and I've got the focus puller on the side of it, if I need to change lenses, I can put in another lens that's the same length and all the rings are in exactly the same places, and it just clips straight in and everything's ready to go. So I don't have to adjust anything, start moving things around, especially if I'm using, electronic focus pullers and stuff like that. It becomes a bit of a pain in the rear end. So these lenses, the more expensive ones, are all across the board the same.
Yeah.
So I can pick up one of the cine lenses from Canon and I can just quickly just bang, 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 and they're just ready to go.
Wow.
You use cheap lenses, they're different sizes, different heights. Sometimes, depending on how big the difference is, you might have to change the rod, which is holding your focus puller. Because a focus puller sits on the side of your camera and it's held onto your camera by a rod. So sometimes you've got to change the distance of the actual rod. So it does become painful.
It does sound like a fair bit of, I guess, there's a lot more technicalities to the cine lenses as well, though, isn't it? Like, when you're shooting with them, there's so much more to it. You know what I mean? Where the normal lenses are a lot easier to sort of chuck on.
They are easier.
And Bob's your uncle. Like, I mean, when I'm shooting interviews, sometimes I just shoot it at 1.4 because I just know.
But you're with the autofocus.
Yeah, that's right.
If I was to try and do 1.4 on one of my lenses, which would probably be a 1.2, T1.2 or something, I would not be able to do that because I'll be constantly having to adapt the actual focus myself. So that's one of the problems. All right, we're coming to the close of the show, so I've got 2 quick questions for you. Okay,
Shoot.
We're going to talk about your favourite lenses. Now, you're going to be coming obviously from the perspective of a Sony person, and I'll be coming from the perspective of a Blackmagic Canon user. Just so you know, they're both EF sort of lenses.
There's nothing wrong with it. You can be a Sony and maybe a Blackmagic user, or a Canon and a Blackmagic user, or you know what I'm trying to say.
I've been trying to get you onto Blackmagic for a very long time, and you just won't do it.
It might happen. I don't know, man. Well, at the moment, I don't have any EF lenses, so I don't know if I can actually use it, but I might have to borrow one of your 28 lenses.
There you go. You can borrow. I'm moving soon to another platform, so you might have a whole splash of new lenses to use. All right. So quickly, what is your favorite lens for travel?
Oh, look. Previously it was 24-105 f4. Recently,
was that a Canon or was it a Sony?
No, they're both. That's a 24-105. Sony makes it, and then Canon makes it as well.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Saying that though, now if I'm going to do any traveling, which I am, and it will be 24-70 2.8. 24-70 2.8.
Why did you just change the spectrum?
It just gives you the aperture. You know what I mean? That's
the aperture.
Yeah.
But you can get a 24-105 2.8. Oh, sorry, that's
Sony.
Canon. Yeah, sorry, that's right. It's not Sony. It's a Canon.
Yeah?
You can.
24 to
I actually
105,
know
2.8.
Yeah, I know someone who's selling one.
Really? No,
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah, and it's also got image stabilization into it. Yeah.
Are you sure it's a 2.8?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you're right.
It is. It's not as common, and they're very, very expensive, but they do exist.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
like-
but anyway,
it's
yeah,
like a unicorn.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
24 to 24 to 72.8 G Master for me.
for you, that's the new range of lenses. I'm still using the old Canon EF lenses, and I would use the 24 to 105, which ironically used to belong to you when you had a Canon.
Yes.
I acquired it. All right. Wide angles, landscape photography. What would you use?
1635, 2.8.
Is that Sony or?
Yeah, that's a Sony G Master. Yeah.
Okay.
Because, I mean, that lens is obviously quite good for landscapes / even astro if you need to. Because obviously it's still quite wide, 2.8 open, and you still can throw it to 16 wide. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Is there any distortion at 16?
Honestly, yes, most likely yes, but being a G Master, it's very, very good. So, and you can fix it in post without sort of noticing too much, I think. So I think you'd be fine. Saying that though, if I want to go even wider, I mentioned the Laowa 14mm zero distortion.
But no, we're talking favorite here. You can't have a whole suitcase full of lenses here.
All right. Yeah, no, 1635.
Okay, well, ironically, 1635 2.8
as well.
L series Canon is what I use. I've always used it.
Okay.
Great landscape lens, absolutely my favorite.
Yep.
And basically, it is also very, very useful for real estate. Though it does distort on the edges when you take it wide open. So you've got to be mindful that you don't want to create a room that looks like a bowling alley because it stretches the image out, which is great if you're trying to sell the property and tell everyone it's much bigger than what it is. But it does create a little bit of distortion on the edges, which you need to be mindful of and just give it like a 2 degree turn back in and the distortion vanishes.
Saying that though, I think a while back, and I don't know much about EF lenses anymore, but Canon did release a 16 to 35 2.8 version 3. It's much bigger. Apparently they're all swearing by it. I'm not sure what the truth is behind it, but
it was a great lens, but I mean, it's
much bigger though, isn't it? Like, it was much heavier.
I wouldn't say heavier. It is bulkier. Just the diameter of it is, because the Series 2 actually is thinner right through until the lens, and then where the lens is, it actually is wider. With the Series 3, it was solid all the way through and much wider than the original. A lot of people said it was a great lens. I never got to use it, and they're not as common as the version 2s.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. Go on, sorry.
Also, what is your favourite sports lens?
Oh, mate, I don't really do a lot of sports, but saying that, the only one that I have will be 70 to 200, 2.8.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't, unless you got lots of money, you probably go, higher focal length. But yeah, 70 to 200 is probably the way to go for me.
Yeah.
2.8.
Well, that's the same one that I actually use for sport, and you also use that when you were traveling overseas, and Chechwan Park, I believe it was, where the wild rhinos were chasing us, trying to kill us.
Yes,
you got to get some photos from a distance. I had to get closer, and but that's exactly the same lens that I use as well, but on the Canon Series L series. So and if you do need some more depth, you can get expanders for them. So a ×2 expander will actually give you 140 through to 400 mil.
Yeah, that's right.
But it drops
to 5.6.
Yeah, so
saying that long focal length, it doesn't make any difference. So you still get very good depth of field.
It's a great lens. I think that's probably one of the reasons you can use the expander. And there's two different types of expanders: a 1.2 or 1.4, I think it is. And 2.
Two times. I know for Sony there is a 2 times and 1.4.
Yeah, 1.4. I think so. Also with the Canons, but yeah. All right, and your last one, your favorite portrait lens.
Oh, probably 85 1.4.
Good choice.
G Master.
Yeah,
What's yours?
This is where we differ.
Okay.
I'm not really a portrait sort of person, but when I am doing it, I love using the 70 to 200. That
Yeah,
2.8.
I've used that a lot as well.
Yeah, it's got a nice softness to it. It's sharp, but it's not overly sharp. And it creates a nice atmosphere. So
I agree.
a huge fan.
I did shoot a fair bit of portraits with that lens as well, and I must say it's fantastic too. But I think maybe the 1.4 at 85mm probably that gives you that extra depth of field.
On the subject of depth of field, there was one thing that I forgot to mention when we're talking about the differences between cheap and expensive lenses. Have you ever heard of the word diffraction?
Yes.
It's almost, I think, wasn't there a song? There's a fraction too much. No, sorry, not diffraction.
No.
That's an old 80s song. But anyway, so diffraction, for the people who don't know, is basically with your f-stops, you sort of get to, like, once you move from 2.8 to 4 and you start going upwards or downwards, whichever way you want to. It always confuses me, the thing. Your image, the background becomes sharper. So if you're doing landscape photography and you want to have the foreground and background sharp, you'd shoot with an f13, f15 sort of thing. If you're doing a portrait photo and you want the background to be blurred, you'd want to be shooting at 2.8. Yep. Now, I, for a very long time, was shooting at f22. And I've got some lenses that will shoot at f30. And I always used to get really super, super sharp images of the background, and the foreground were always super sharp. But diffraction is an issue which comes out predominantly in cheaper lenses, but it also is present in the more expensive lenses, depending on which one you've got, where once you sort of hit the point of about f13, the image in the background doesn't continue getting sharper and sharper and sharper. It actually becomes blurrier. So it sort of gets to a point where it starts falling off the sharpness. So they basically say don't shoot at f22 or f20, shoot at f11. Me personally, with my landscape lens, where I do shoot at those higher ranges, I always find that it's super sharp. The 16 to 35 lens is actually really great in that. But the cheaper lenses, like kit lenses and all that, if you start going over f13, you're going to start noticing blur and stuff. So just be mindful of that.
You're not getting maximum out of the lens.
No, and this is where the cheaper lenses once again fail. Though in saying that the more expensive lenses also do have to a level some diffraction. Yeah,
true.
All right, last question for you. Should you use filters on your lenses? Now, we're always at odds on this one. You'll say no, right?
No, not exactly. I mean, yes, you should. So ND filters or whatever else, when you're shooting video, they definitely help. You know what I mean?
So CP, polarizing sort of filters?
Yeah, polarizing is fine. UV, on the other hand, I can tell you to go to hell with UV filters. Saying that though, they always have. I mean, I know you use UV filters on your lenses.
I do.
The way I look at it, why the hell would you put El Cheapo shitty glass in front of your $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 lens? You know what I mean? That's the way I look at it. Saying that though, if you're shooting a motocross or some sort of event where there's shit flying into your lens, by all means, protect that glass and then do your best with the UV filter. But you obviously have different thoughts on that.
Oh, look, I'm always about protection. Everything that I do, I love my lenses. I want to take care of them. And one of the reasons I do that is because the first time I bought that 1635 L series lens for my Canon, I went to a mountain bike event. And
so that's one of the reasons why you should have one, yes.
And I put a filter on there, much to your disgust. And as I pulled up the camera to take the first photo, a bike went past and a rock flew up and actually hit the actual filter and cracked the filter, but the lens was perfectly intact. And we're talking a $4,000 lens. So I put on there a $150 UV filter, which protected a $4,000 investment. So
that's definitely
it worked. In saying that, there's certain things that, for example, my cine lenses, I actually don't run filters on those, purely because I just haven't found the right size for them as yet. But I will one day. But also, you did make a comment. You said, why would you put cheap lens filters in the front of your lens? You can also buy very expensive filters.
Yeah, I'm sure you can, but still, that's compared to your glasses, I still look, honestly, like I've in the past I've done a lot of night photography and a lot of night dark shooting, and then as soon as I put the UV filter on, it just degrades the image.
Oh, it does. Look, anything you put in front of your lens is going to obviously but it for me it's a balance, because will there be that much of a distortion to the image if I put it there to protect it? And for me, but with my cine lenses, for example, and all that, most of the time I'm shooting controlled environments.
Correct.
I'm not shooting mountain biking.
Right,
I wouldn't be taking one of my $7,000 cine lenses
agree.
to a mountain biking event. So I still use them in various environments, but not all the time.
Yeah. I mean, we agree to disagree, but I guess at the end of the day, is you purchasing a very expensive lens, and you're trying to protect it as much as possible. You know what I mean? And I mean, all my lenses, I had some lenses for 6, 7, 8 years, and they still look like they were still brand new. You know what I mean?
I will give you that much. Your lenses always do look new, and that's why I buy them off you when you're finished.
All right.
Yeah. and they still look good because I've got a filter on the front of them.
Yeah.
But in saying that, it's a personal choice. If you can't afford to go and replace that lens, if something goes wrong with it, put a filter on it.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And don't use a cheap shit filter, because the reality behind it is it will impact.
Yeah, what's a good quality UV filter that you recommend?
Me personally, I use Polar Pro as a base, and they're not cheap. And then I start moving up to things like Schneider, and they're very, very expensive filters. So, if you can go off and buy yourself a $50 filter, and let's be honest, if you're using a kit lens, it's probably not going to make much difference. Right. But if you're putting a $50 filter onto an expensive lens, it's going to show. Also, the size of your lens, like the diameter of it, will actually also change the cost of the lens. So if you've got like an 82 wide lens, the filter is going to cost you a hell of a lot more to put it on top of one of those lenses as it would to a 50mm lens. But that's pretty much it, really.
No, makes sense, man. So that's very interesting. I mean, look, I've learned potentially a lot of about cine lenses from you, man, and hopefully in the near future I'll buy myself a cine camera, cinematic, and and then hopefully use some of those lenses. But
and I learned a new word today, vignetting, as opposed to vignetting.
That's right.
So there you go. It's my speech impediments out the window.
Well, there you go. So thanks for listening. Is there anything else that you want to add?
No, that was pretty much it. And so
interesting stuff.
We're back again.
That's it. Let's
After
do
a
it.
break. Hopefully we'll have
a couple of interesting episodes coming up. So tune in and tell your friends, because more people that we have listening, that motivates us more, and it creates a community. So we're all about the community rather than competition, I guess.
Exactly.
So there you go.
And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Video Guys once again for supporting us with this episode by providing us the DZO Pictor 20 to 50mm lens, which I will be buying. And I never thought I'd say that, but it is actually quite a nice lens. There'll probably be people out there who are disgusted by my choice, but I actually liked it because it's got a nice, smooth, cinematic sort of feel to it.
I think Video Guys have been actually very helpful to us as well, and we definitely appreciate that, Video Guys, if you're listening.
Thanks, guys.
Excellent. All right, have a good one. All the best, guys.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.